They're live. Okay, I have a rustic wood-looking can root beer. Not meant to be a product endorsement. That was just the one that was on special. And I got my Western-looking mug here for my root beer. So usually I don't bring liquid in while I'm filming, but I'm feeling parched. For sure. After a pretty long day of driving. And I took quite a bit of Western clothing. I didn't wear any of it except for this shirt. Well, a couple of t-shirts or whatever. I wasn't planning for this to be a Q&A live chat thing. That's on there on accident. If you ask me a question, maybe I'll answer it, maybe I won't. This is more of a catch-all video of the usual menswear stuff. Oh, I forgot the shoes. 1 second. Where did I leave those? If I run to the other room to grab shoes. I don't know who's at the door, and I'm not answering it. Okay. I know this is a boot channel for most of you, but these are the boots that I wore pretty much all week. And I thought about just donating them while I was there, but I ended up wearing them the whole time driving home. So they're not completely worn out yet. So these are my Texas boots for the most part. And I posted photos of the joke hat already. They wore the other one. I didn't end up wearing this one more than a little bit because I needed to catch sweat while I was doing stuff. I did take this one and a couple felt ones, and I didn't end up wearing the felt ones at all, of course. It was still too warm. It was only humid like really one day. Not terrible. I wore this belt most of the time, which is just that USA Celtic one. I swapped out the buckle for the regular buckle for sizing issue with the other shorts that are a little too big. So this one that I am wearing that has I found this buckle and it's a two-tone kind of brown in the front and black around. I had a second one of this that I think was smaller and I gave it to my sister. This was the same buckle I had on a belt way back when I was 10, but I had gotten rid of it, and then I found this buckle again on a little kid's belt at the thrift store one time, so I bought the thing just to get the buckle. So I can still use the same buckle that I had when I was young with some of these belts. But that one had an Irish design buckle on it, a Celtic knotwork thing, and it's a little bit longer, so the holes don't quite match up where my waist matches up with every pair of pants or whatever. So, like I said, I swapped it out for just the trip. Usually I put that one back on there. I took this flannel shirt and I wore it for like 8 minutes or something. I couldn't find it the next day when I was looking for it. So I switched to this one or whatever. And I wore this a couple days, and in the morning, this is the seersucker one that I mentioned in the comments. Just still got a bit sweaty driving and whatnot and da-da-da. These are the nylon shorts that I talked about in the other video. I forget which one, where I talked about I have a different style that have the belted waist, and I showed that belt. This one has no belted waist, but it has these snap cargo pockets, and these snaps are not very good. They stay closed when they want to, but a little bit more wallet security, and they do have a side cargo pocket. And I forget what video it was. I don't think it was the Safari video, but I think I mentioned them also in the Safari video. Anyway, so pretty much all the shorts I wore for 2 days each. So with that pair of shorts, I wore this shirt, which is just a short sleeve camp shirt in kind of an autumny color, or the yellow shirt that when I went to Walmart on my sightseeing expedition, I was wearing that. So I was the nicest dressed person in Walmart with my nylon shorts and my long sleeve shirt. And then, of course, these other alternate cargo pants, but these don't have, as I was showing in the other video, this zip security deal, which came in handy to put my house keys from back home and stuff that I knew I wasn't going to need while I was there, but didn't want to fall out in the car or something. So I could zip those up and keep them out of the way and still have them. Whereas these are just regular JCPenney cargo shorts. Works good. Okay. And so with that, then I wore the newer LL Bean stretch chambray or whatever they're calling it, that I wasn't even going to take because I figured the fabric was heavier and it'd be sweatier. But since I was indoor most of the time, this was fine. This is a lot lighter weight, Eli Cattleman or whatever. A little more breathable fabric, more open weave. So that was most of my clothes for the duration. Like I said, these are just some denim shorts that I use for road trips because they're not as big in the waist, so I don't have to worry about them feeling like they're falling down when I get out of the car after 6 hours or whatever. So the souvenirs, I didn't end up going to hardly any place with souvenirs. There was one particular store that supposedly has everything that my trucker friend loves. It seemed like it was mostly food items and their own branded merch and some other stuff from the university and whatever. So that was where I got this hat that I showed in the photo. And has nothing to do with their branding or whatever, but it kind of matches good with this vest that I wore briefly. The vest is more yellow and this is more of a burnt orange. I don't know if that really reads on this camera with this light, but yeehaw. And so I already had this and I wore it very briefly the one morning when I needed a little extra layer. So a bunch of the other stuff that I took didn't end up getting worn at all, as always. And that hat was just for fun and also kind of Halloween colors, I guess, with the black back. And I did start making a list of all the counties. I didn't add the other counties from Interstate 30 and 20 yet. Should be mostly 20, not 30. But I went through Fort Worth instead of Dallas this time. And I said, I know in my post that I was going to Dallas, and I never actually went to Dallas. I went near Dallas. And some of the videos that I ended up watching were places that I went near but didn't go to. This didn't end up being much of a sightseeing trip at all. So it's kind of hard for me to say about some of these sites, but at least I can give my advice on that kind of thing in a minute. Finish the channel rundown stuff first before I get into the other. Oh. Me out of order again. I haven't made a video in a week, so I'm forgetting. So, yeah, part one. We're in part one right now. Part one. Look at us go. So when I get to part two, we'll get into that. I guess that was a long introduction for part one, but the clothes was mostly part one. And now I did my 12 boots in 12 weeks video thing that people are kind of trickling in, watching that in little bits. So like I said, I have nothing to add to that. So there won't be a video for that this week. This will be this week's video. But let's talk about boots, and we'll call it part two. So if anybody is scrolling and not really watching, part two, we'll talk about boots. Because it's only been 10 minutes and some people might still be watching that. Like I said, the meat of this video is people who want to hear about my boots, not people who care about my travel log. So we'll save Travelogue. And the souvenirs, the other souvenirs though. Again, I did a photo of this already. The one shirt. I was really kind of disappointed with. So technically, we're not in part 2 yet. We're still in part 1. They'll figure it out. I'll hold up the sign again, and it'll say part 2 some more. I wanted to find something that was similar to the shirt that I had way back when that I posted when I was very young and took the bus, and I ended up spending like 2 or 3 hours in the Albuquerque bus station, something horrible like that. Maybe it was 4 hours. I don't think it was 4 hours. Denver, I know, was 4 hours. But I didn't buy anything in Denver. Almost everything was branded as Route 66, and so I'm not. I mean, I lived like 2 miles or something from Route 66 for most of my life, so it's like not a big deal. It's a total. I always think of it as like a total boomer thing. So we'll get back to that when I talk about this other stuff. So I don't know. I was never like that super worried about Route 66. So this was about the only shirt that I saw that wasn't Route 66. So the one thing I've collected as souvenirs is the one thing I really don't need is more shirts and hats, right? So I got 1 hat, 1 shirt. And then on the way back, I still didn't end up at any real gift store places. I stopped at one gas station in, what was the name of it? I'm forgetting all the names. Maybe it's on here. New Mexico, not Las Cruces. The next little place next to Las Cruces. And it was called, I should totally remember this. Where is it? Way down here. Is it even on this map? Probably not. Oh, it's going north, not west. No. No, it'd be going west. Deming. That was it. Deming, New Mexico. I had a nice chat with the dude, but he explained how that gift store does not open yet, so I couldn't buy any of the stuff from the little gift store. And then there was 3 across the top. Like I said, I'll talk about this more in a minute, so I kind of save it. Anyway, I didn't get to stop at any of those ones, and the one I did stop at, like I said, he wasn't really selling that kind of stuff, and most of it was the kind of stuff that I don't need. And we mostly talked about places we've driven or whatever. Anyway, it wasn't really stuff specific. But the place called Stuckey's apparently no longer exists. That was the place where we stopped in Amarillo way back when I was younger, and they had all the alligator heads and lacquer and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if these new gift stores, there's one that's been around since 1936 or something, and that was between Albuquerque and Tucumcari, I want to say. They still might have some of that kind of stuff that Stuckey's used to have. Don't quote me. Didn't stop there. Don't know. It was on the wrong side of the interstate, so we didn't cross over. Even though I could have used the restroom that time and been happy. So yeah, here was my list of items: clothes, food, guitar, hats, boots, camping, emergency equipment, and books. That was what I packed. I didn't need the guitar. I didn't need most of the hats. I didn't need any of the boots. Although some of the boots you would have wanted at the rest area because there was snake warnings, and in Arizona there was also scorpion warnings. Didn't end up reading any of the books. Didn't do any emergency camping, although that stuff I would have packed anyway. Although there were places I could have camped, but obviously didn't. And then the food, obviously, it means junk road food, not real food most of the time. But some stuff that you can eat when you get there, like root beer and honeycomb cereal or whatever. And like I said, I took almost all the wrong clothes and way too many. So the other thing I got that's not technically a souvenir, but this was in Arizona. I got the old Texas guy himself shirt. And it was a cheap price. It was only 20 bucks. Only 20. So I thought that was a good enough deal. It was like $1 cheaper than the New Mexico shirt. $21. Although I think this one they charged me sales tax, and I don't know if they charged me sales tax on this one. Probably. But not California sales tax. So I did get a Willie Nelson t-shirt to add to my collection of music shirts that I don't hardly ever wear. And that's still not boots. I know. So, like I said, okay, so part two. Now that we finished souvenirs, we're still in part two. For those of you who are scrolling, who are really confused and saying, I thought part two already started. Where's part three? You're probably not going to care about part three anyway, unless you're really interested in the travel part of this video. But that was only, what, 5 minutes? Okay, it's not terrible. So there was one boot company, I should really have written these down, but I didn't, called Dyes or something in Vernon, which is way up past, or well, I shouldn't say past, I should say well, between Wichita Falls and Amarillo, or Amarillo, is that little town. And there was a big Hampton Inn or something was the only thing I could really see that I could identify as a landmark to remember which town that was, because there was a whole bunch of little towns. And that wasn't the way I wanted to go. I wanted to go the other interstate that I thought would be faster and have better weather, because Interstate 40 can be very temperamental this time of year, and we got lucky. We missed most of it. There was flash flood warnings the one morning, but we outran the clouds basically. And I thought we would drop down to Lubbock, but we didn't end up doing that. And then there's another place. I'm on New Mexico page. Again, I should have wrote down these names, but whatever. There was another place in Texas called something. It was named after the boots or something. What was the name of that little place? Is it going to be on here? This map is not complete. Formosa? No, that doesn't sound right. And okay, Vernon's way up here, almost at Oklahoma. We didn't go to Lawton, Oklahoma either. That could have been a useful detour. I don't know what's in Lawton, Oklahoma. It must be southwest of east, sorry. Southeast of Wichita Falls. There's some town where they do boots. And I had watched the video, but it wasn't one of the regular videos. It wasn't like Kirby Allison or Roseanville or any of those guys. It was somebody else doing a video, and I didn't catch his name, and I didn't catch the name of the town. So I spent half the video going, is this San Antonio? Is this El Paso? Where is this? And then they finally said, and he said Justin was near there, but there's a town called Justin near Fort Worth, and I don't know if that has anything to do with the actual boot company or if that's just a coincidence. Is it Bowie? I can't even read these things on here. Decatur, I know that wasn't it. Decatur. It's not as far. So yeah, Denton. There's not much on 35 above Dallas. There's like Denton and Flower Mound. I know it's neither of those. It's not on Highway 35, but it's near Highway 35, as far as I could tell. And I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, there was a little video, like little custom boot place in a video about called it sounded like an Italian name or something, Formolio or something. Anyway, maybe you can find it if you find that video. I didn't go there. I don't know what town it is. I think we drove through that town, whichever one it is. Sorry, not very helpful. Anywho, most of the videos that I was watching about the custom boots. One company was very typical custom stuff, like a 5-year lead. He didn't say anything about pricing, but I'm sure it's more than your average Joe want to spend, even if he does want something better fitting and more long lasting or prettier leather. Most of this kind of stuff was rock star stuff, though, or wannabe kind of performer, celebrity kind of stuff, more than like real cowboy kind of stuff, I think. But again, a real cowboy might want that better fit and that better footbed materials and stuff than the Ariats and the Thursday boots and even the Dan Post boots and even the Justin boots, because as we've learned, recently, most of that stuff is junk. The stuff that might be a step up, again, still your Tony Lamas and some of the Tacovas, some of the Ariat, the Benchmade or whatever. There was another place in Austin that, again, I didn't go to Austin this time, so I didn't get a chance to check. And the last time I drove through Austin, I was going like a bat out of Hades to try and beat the traffic, and I wasn't interested in custom boots all that much at the time anyway, because I was looking for work, not for video excuses to spend money or make videos or whatever. And during that time period, Texas businesses and things were more open than California ones. So I probably would have been able to go in and ask lots of questions and get useful information if I had been interested in that information. This time, I'm sure it's business as usual, and they're all busy. And if I'm not spending a couple grand, they might, I don't know if they would talk to me all that much anyway. And I did not take my camera, so I didn't get any scenery shots. I didn't get any of the usual kind of shots. It was more of a family kind of trip, and my family doesn't want to do any of the kind of things that I find interesting ever. Hence why I didn't wear any of my fancy clothes or do any of the stuff that I would be talking about in part 3. But I still have stuff to talk about in part 3. So anyway, so I missed that opportunity to look into the things, I guess, twice now, but Austin was way out of the way. Not terribly close to Fort Worth, obviously. And but this other place, they have stuff that's similar to that custom stuff, but I didn't see any videos about their construction methods, so I don't know how much the quality is lower. I don't know how much the prices then are also lower, but your lead times are now non-existent, because you can go in, and if they have your size, you can just buy your size. That you can try them on in the store without getting your feet measured extensively and all that. They will just have boots on the shelf. But that video is from like 3 years ago, so I can't give the best advice on that. But again, they had stuff that maybe not be for cowboying as much as the Cody James brand at Boot Barn or whatever. That again might break down sooner than you need it to, but is also more maybe fancy schmancy than is practical. So your results may vary. I mean, I typically buy certain things that I use them while they're good, and then when they start to degrade, I use them for these things instead. This can be a nice shirt that becomes a work shirt, right? When it's new, it's a new shirt. When it's not new, it's still a shirt, And boots. Again, cowboy boots are a little bit more niche market, a little bit more, you're not using them for hiking, you're not using them for warehousing, you're not using them for yard work so much, unless you're just, all you ever wear is cowboy boots. So there's that gray area. But then if all you ever wear is cowboy boots, they're probably not very fancy cowboy boots. But if they are fancy cowboy boots, how long before they look not fancy? Because the guy who does the custom boots was saying he still has boots that he made, well, not him personally, but that he made and sold, that customers are still bringing in 20, 30 years later that are still in good condition. And so that's the whole point of custom boots, is that they do last longer. But again, if they're still in good condition, then again, you're still not using them for in the field, in the warehouse, yada, yada, yada. If you're Lyle Lovett, as he name drops in the video, you're not doing chores around your own house much, probably anyway. So I'm pretty sure Lyle Lovett hires a plumber, you know, even though he's not even as famous as Willie Nelson, you know. Because I like Lyle Lovett, nothing, you know, nothing bad to say about him or his music, you know. But I don't think Willie Nelson's mowed a lawn in quite some time. Just saying. So, yes, I was disappointed. And then El Paso is another place that's supposed to have a fair amount of custom boot makers and designers. But of course, I was in El Paso at like 4 o'clock in the morning, both times I've been there, and was just happy to beat all the traffic. And I wasn't going to sit around. Well, I don't know what's open and what's closed on a weekend anyway, because all my relatives are saying, well, if it's Saturday, they should be open. It's like, no, this is not Boot Barn that I know is open on Sunday. These are custom people. That means they might work regular work week hours and not have to be there on the weekend. Or maybe the store's there on the weekend, but the people who know anything about the fit and the process and all that, they're probably not there on Saturday. So even going on a Saturday as a tourist, probably not going to get any information. And then on a Sunday, they're not open at all. You know, to even probably sell stuff, because again, I don't know if it's a normal storefront or not. So I didn't even look. I didn't even look into the El Paso ones that I wanted to check out, 2 or 3, but the timing was terrible. And the again, if I'm not spending a zillion dollars, will they even humor me and answer much more than the basic questions that I already learned from watching a video? You know, I don't know. So yeah, and like I said, and in those videos, they didn't necessarily get into pricing, because my first question for any of those people would be, well, what's your base price? What's the lowest I can get out for it? Not that usually if you're getting custom boots, you're thinking about that, but as a starting point, can I even dip my toe in this water? Is it even worth it for me to ask, or should I just go get 2 more pairs of Thursday boots and call it a day, because that's $500 and I'm done, right? So I wish I could answer that question, especially 30 minutes later, but I can't. So on to part 3. Like I said, I know I didn't really answer the boots part of the question. Part 3. This will be the travelogue portion of the video, where I talk about places to go and people to know, or whatever. Part 4, for those of you who made it this far and are wondering, part 4 will be the decor part. So I might as well put that last, because like I said, nobody watches my decor videos, but I do still have stuff to talk about moving, home furnishing, estate sales, yada, yada, yada. So I will get into that. So part 2, again, Texas counties. I had counted. Some of them I'm just not sure, because of this atlas. I was just using this, and it's very hard. It has all the county names written on it, but it's very hard to tell which ones actually touch the interstate and which ones don't. Like, I wasn't sure about Jefferson Davis, if I had been through that. And yes, I have been through Jefferson Davis. So it's on this list as a maybe, but not counted in my 30 to 40. So, because on this map, yeah, it was really hard to tell. Whereas, like, some of them are nice, big, juicy, fat squares, like right here, but I haven't been here. This is, you know, Lincoln County in New Mexico, near, I don't know, Fort Sumner or whatever it's called. I think. Have not been there. Okay, I don't know. I've only been on this bit of the 10 and this bit of the 40. Okay. So I didn't count the New Mexico counties or whatever. The bit of the 40, most of the scenery resembles a lot of what you get in the high desert in California, but with slightly different flora. Some of the plants may be a little bit different. I stopped in that one, like I said, that one gas station that was kind of in between the 2 towns. But both times I've gone through Las Cruces, it's pretty much been dark out, and I only stopped at the rest area and stayed there for an hour or whatever. This Lordsburg, I could not tell you anything about Lordsburg. Is that the one? Is Lordsburg the one that was in Stagecoach? They were trying to get the Lordsburg with the John Wayne and the John Ford movie way back when. I think that's where I know Lordsburg from. So yeah, the Rio Grande is right there from Las Cruces to El Paso, obviously. The one part of El Paso that everybody thinks, wow, this city, I think is Juarez. I think when you first see all those lights when you're coming from the east, that's actually Mexico, not Tejas. I think. And then, yeah, my neighbor, he was going, I couldn't believe how big El Paso was. I thought it was much smaller. I was, well, it probably was way back when, but I mean, I had a friend who was in the army who was there for a while way back when, and all he talked about was how hot and terrible it was. But I don't know how much it's gotten built up since then. Probably a lot, like every other place. Tempe, I mean, I was in Tempe way back when for some concerts, and we were camping out there in the dirt, and there was only like one little outhouse, and it had a line of hippies, 2 miles long. So I went out in the spiky stuff and dug a little hole, and didn't get bit by a snake on my rear end or whatever, and did it that way. That's probably not a campsite anymore. That's probably condos now, or a Walmart or something. If you were starting from California and you wanted to see like Meteor Crater and Grand Canyon and Petrified Forest, those are all near the 40, but not on the 40. I would say go to the border of New Mexico and spend the night near the Petrified Forest and then work your way back. And you'd probably have a more pleasant trip if you can get the room bookings, yada, yada. I know the Grand Canyon Visitor Center burned this year or last year or whatever. So what's on that south rim now, I don't know. How much they charge for a motel near there might be just as much or more than Yellowstone for all I know. Things that you'd want to know. We didn't get to Flagstaff early like I usually do. Usually when I've been through there, I've always had lunch or late breakfast or something in Flagstaff. This time we were running super late, so we had a late lunch in Kingman, which is, at the bottom, not up at the top. So we still had quite a decent little drive before we got to Flagstaff. So I didn't get to explore Flagstaff at all this time because we didn't make it in time to really be able to burn time, and with the weather coming in, we kind of had to go. So we stayed overnight actually in Gallup. Now we went to the wrong place from the place that we had booked, so we got to drive through downtown Gallup, but everything was already closed. It was Sunday night, so we kind of picked the wrong day to see anything there. The next morning, that place was packed. We went back to retrieve something from the Lost and Found, and everybody was eating there. The place where we stayed, there was like 6 people eating there. So I guess that downtown Gallup is more popular, but we stayed in the west exit 16, and that worked out. Instead of exit 22. The GPS thing went all screwy. It got us off at exit 20 and told us we were in Gallup. And it was like, yeah, we figured that much out. We didn't need GPS to figure that out. So that's how we ended up at the wrong place. But, we figured it out. Once we got to talk to that front desk person, and they got on their computer and said, oh, you're in the wrong part of town entirely. So then Albuquerque was a blur. We just drove through it. We made it there in time for lunch, but we ended up having lunch at the Dairy Queen instead at the truck stop. Again, not much souvenirs, but that's where I got this. Because we didn't go to any of the normal souvenir stand kind of places. And Stuckey's, there was a couple of old, faded, dead billboards around Albuquerque, but no actual stuckies. So the billboards are still there. So that is useful, I guess. Like I said, petrified forest, meteor. My sister kept asking me questions like, where is this? As if I know. You know, I haven't been there. I don't know how far it is off the freeway. And asking me if the Rockies are in Arizona. I don't think so. I think the Continental Divide being closer to Gallup than Albuquerque would be a good indicator that, but I know I-35 goes on the east side of the Rockies. So most of those mesas that you're seeing above Albuquerque and a bit to the east of Albuquerque, there's a ridge that's all maybe technically still the Rockies, but that was before the Rockies eroded way back 30 million years ago or whatever. So yeah, the Continental Divide, I had a friend who explained it to me once a long time ago, and I don't remember all of it, but I think it's mostly just the direction the rivers run east to west. So the Colorado River goes that way and the Rio Grande goes that way. I think that's the gist of it. The time change was not in Odessa where I thought it would be, geographically. The time change was not till New Mexico Mountain Time. So El Paso is still on Central Time, I think, even though El Paso is like almost as far west as Albuquerque is. And Odessa is below Amarillo. Well, I'm on the wrong page, but I call it Amarillo. I think Odessa is like directly below that. But so I asked the guy at the gas station if the time changed here in Odessa, and he said no, sir. And so I said that's odd. I thought for sure. That being, yeah, San Antonio is below Wichita Falls, and Odessa is on the next page of this map. And Odessa is a little bit west of Amarillo, but still not Mountain Time. So there you go. So that's kind of weird. You would think that this big fat chunk of West Texas that looks like the bird head or whatever would be Mountain Time, but it is not. So there you go. So that's useful. And then, of course, going down, I wanted to go down from Lubbock through San Angelo and do it that way. Because San Angelo is the one that has all the cute little town. I think it's a golf course where it's all named Kilt Avenue and Tartan Road and all this stuff. And I wanted to take pictures of that and didn't get to, just because, Kilt junk for this channel that nobody watches. Except for some reason, you all still watch the hat video. The Scottish headwear video gets more views than almost anything. I don't know for how long or why, but that's the video that people still watch. So I was going to, have my little Tartan Avenue photo or whatever. Didn't go that way, so don't know. And like I said, didn't want to backtrack all the way back up to Vernon on a Sunday to see if they would talk about boots. Not really much point in doing that. And there was one place in Fort Worth I wanted to check out, but again, I was at Fort Worth Saturday at like 8 o'clock at night. There wasn't as much traffic as like LA. It wasn't terrible for that. I got out of Fort Worth pretty much in no time at all, even going through the downtown section that I could have skipped going on 820. But originally I was just going to go south, and I was pretty sure that I would hit 20. But then when I saw 30, I just took that and was like, well, now I can say I've been on Interstate 30 as well, even though they all kind of link up. Same spot. The 30 goes to Texarkana, and the 20 goes to Shreveport. So I haven't been to either of those. But I have been up 35 east before, but I didn't go all the way down 35 west this time where they remerge or whatever. Blah, blah, blah. So I'm not sure where 20 actually starts. In terms of, I think maybe it's just called 30 all the way through Dallas. Maybe that's why I didn't see it last time I went through. I'm not sure what that is. That is 45. Okay, never mind. So yeah, I think that's just 30 starts here and 20 is part of it. There's a couple like in California that do that too, where it really drives me insane. Like when you want to go 5 to 101, you can go one way, but if you're going the other way, you can't get on the other one or something. And there's another one that I just did in Barstow where it only wants to tell me 15 north or 15 south, and I don't want 15. So I ended up having to go east on 40 to loop around so I could get back because I don't want needles. I want Mojave. So I could get back doing that. I'll talk about that a little bit more when I come back. So the Texas, I mean, yeah, like I did the middle of Texas. Basically, I was at Odessa at 1 o'clock in the morning, and there was still kind of some screwy traffic and a lot of crappy road work. Odessa is another one of those big areas where I couldn't tell you where the town began and where it ended. It just kept going and going and going, and we were in a Death Star corridor, concrete block kind of thing. So it was a miracle that I could get off and even get gas at the one place. Then all of a sudden it was open, and then it closed up again. I thought Midland was farther away. Midland is actually right by there. So I kept thinking, when am I going to see a signs for Midland? I thought Midland was before Odessa. Yeah, it is before Odessa, like 10 minutes before Odessa. Okay, never mind. So what's in Midland worth seeing? I don't know, because it was like, oh, here it is. Oh, now it's gone. Okay. There was a bunch of stuff that first part of the burbs or whatever. Like it doesn't drop off to total farmland immediately. There's still more stuff than you, I guess, expect or whatever. Because when you came in the other road, where it was like town, ghost town, you know, kind of farm, town, ghost town. But that whole part of Texas, I don't know why they don't just call it Oklahoma. It's just because Red River's there. I think it's basically all the same scenery, all the same stuff. it's Oklahoma. Except that then they're warning you about snakes at the rest area. So like I said, yeah, not a lot of sightseeing here. I did check out the Walmart twice. The windmills and the oil fields. I mean, I could mostly see the lights, but I couldn't see the actual anything because it was dark. And then down through 20 was pretty much almost as sparse as 10. That part that I went through to San Antonio before. I mean, I'm not talking about where they merged together. Oh, I had to stop at some random gas station, and of course it was closed in the middle of the night. And there, somebody had hit a deer. The whole street was red. And there was a couple that were like that, but one, it was just, must have been a big truck. A whole lane of the freeway was just red. Where was that? It was near where they merge, Reeves County or Ward County, one of those two, somewhere in there. Yeah. But there's no towns that I can read on here. Pecos. Somewhere around Pecos, probably. And then Van Horn is where... Is that where that might have been where I stopped? That's farther west. I don't know, Pecos or Van Horn, somewhere around there. Yeah, there was something significant I meant to mention about Van Horn, and I can't remember what it was. Oh well. Yeah, if you're there at 3 o'clock in the morning, you that's life. It's about when I was there, I think. 3 o'clock, somewhere in there. Or maybe Van Horn's where the time changes, and I'm remembering it wrong. I don't think. Is that what it was? Maybe that's where the time changes. Yeah. I might have just said all that stuff earlier and forgot. So yeah, I think it's Van Horn, not El Paso, where the time changes, but it's definitely not Odessa where it should be. Right? So somebody earlier in the comments will mention that, and then I'll be like, just keep watching the video. At 45 minutes, I get it right. Yeah, I knew Van Horn was significant for something. Somewhere on the 10, there was a little town with like a little church with a steeple with kind of a loop, and I had stopped to get gas there a long time ago. And then I couldn't figure out how to get back on the freeway, so I went back the other way and made it. I don't know if that's an illegal turn across the little thing or whatever, but I don't think I made an illegal turn. I just didn't feel like negotiating the whole thing. It was just like, let's go this way and not get lost. Because a lot of those places seem like if you get off the interstate, you are not getting back on the interstate. Good luck finding it ever again. This way, I-20 felt less like that. There was a couple places where it was a little touch and go, but there was a frontage road almost the whole way. So if you couldn't get back on that entrance, you got on the next one, and it wasn't that bad. I only had that problem like twice. Again, the bigger problem was because Odessa had all the ramp closures because of all the road construction. So it wasn't like a normal problem. It was kind of like they didn't finish the road work this summer yet problem. So kind of that, but you're not really going to Odessa for sightseeing much. But there is also a meteor crater in Odessa that I didn't get to see. And near there was another town called Colorado Town, and they had a sign that said Colorado River, and I was going, that's the wrong Colorado River. That's not. And in New Mexico, though, there was also a little Colorado River, which I assume is a tributary, but I don't know how it would hit the actual Colorado River flowing the way I think a river would have to be flowing to hit that. So I doubt it. I don't know. It must be a tributary to Rio Grande instead of the actual Colorado River. Don't know. Don't quote me. It's pretty far from the part of Colorado that touches New Mexico up in Four Corners, where I also wanted to go but didn't yet. I could have swung it this trip if I really wanted to. I just didn't want to be in the car anymore because we spent 3 days getting there, so I didn't really want to spend 3 days getting back. Just seemed stupid. But yeah, that I'm pretty sure that little, if I can find it on here, there's a river. I can't read these. I'd need a magnifying glass, but I don't think it's Santa Rosa. I think it was near Santa Rosa. We definitely stopped at Santa Rosa. No, we were going to stop at Santa Rosa. Santa Rosa is a little town on the hill that I actually wanted to check out that we didn't stop at because she said she wanted to stop in Santa Rosa, and then she drove right through it, and I was just sitting in the car going, I thought we were going there. Well, guess we're not going there. And so we ate at Tucumcari instead and bought that shirt. So yeah, I wanted to check out that Santa Rosa. I think Colorado River was near there. Don't quote me. But Four Corners is way nowhere near there. Four Corners is above Gallup. And the easier way to get there, I think, is through Arizona. Or it looks like this way through Farmington might work if you go up from not Gallup. Well, there's a road that goes straight from Gallup too, but doesn't go through Farmington. But if you were going the other way, this looks like more of a real highway to something. 217 maybe? I don't know. But that's not Gallup. There's no town really listed there. This, like I said, this map is not comprehensive, but this is how I got home. Worked well enough. But of course, I knew coming home I was going to be on, 2 interstates and done, and it ended up being 3 interstates. So there you go. Or no, 3, and then it turned into 4, I think. 35, 20, 10 was what I was expecting, and then I added 30, and I added 40. So there's that. So however many, was that 5 then? I counted wrong twice. Whereas Arizona, yeah, like I went I wanted to go up the little road that goes west of Havasu or north from Havasu, kind of to Bullhead City, maybe, or something. I didn't end up doing that. I don't know if that's a better or worse way than Joshua Tree. The part of Joshua Tree that's right by the 10 freeway that everybody probably goes that way to get to it is easy peasy because you just turn off right after the gas station where I bought the Willie Nelson shirt. Or before you get to that, actually, if you're coming from LA. The part that goes down from Barstow, if you tried to convince a girl that that was a real road and you were taking her on a romantic, she would probably not believe you. she would probably be jumping out of the car and running away when she feels like she's in the middle of nowhere with no escape and no street signs and no, it's going in the opposite direction of the way you think that the national park should be. Because I did end up backtracking on that more than I thought was necessary, but I didn't trust going through Amboy, although there is supposedly an access to Amboy from 40 that I have not been on. I had a friend a long time ago who would always want me to go to places like Amboy with him, and I would always decline because I couldn't think of anything that could possibly be there that I would want to see. Joshua Tree, I think you might want to take the western entrance if you actually want to see Joshua trees, because I drove through the thing kind of using it as a toll road without seeing any. I didn't see a single one. I saw some very pretty scenery. I saw a lot of rocks that looked exactly like the New Mexico stuff that I already seen, 8 hours earlier or 10 hours earlier. When it was like, oh, I was already here. It was called Deming. Yeah, I didn't see a lot of stuff that was necessarily as unique as, I might want. But see, my sister lived in the desert for a while, so she likes going ways like Mojave to Barstow because she says they're faster than going through like Lucerne valleys and Victorville or whatever. So I looped around that way. I could have gone the Lucerne Valley way, but then you're dealing with more lights, you're dealing with more traffic. Again, I knew I didn't want Interstate 15 because I ignored Lucerne Valley to skip Interstate 15 because I didn't want to go the San Bernardino way to get caught back in this exact same stuff. But it probably would have been shorter to go the Lucerne Valley way than going the Barstow way, and maybe a lot less confusing. So when I got to Barstow, and I was like, no, I don't want to go north on the 15, but I also don't want to go east on the 40. But at least if I go east on the 40, I know I can flip around, like I said, and not be in Needles and head to. So I did that, and that worked out. But going that way on Mojave, I had never been that way before. There's some more stuff on the 58 than I thought there was. There's like 2 truck stops in a town that I had never been to before. I had a friend a long time ago who took me to Reno, and he wanted me to stay with him in Palmdale, but now that's kind of considered East Palmdale, so I didn't understand why he did. But my sister was right by 14 freeway, so I stayed the night with her, and then he was all mad because he had to come pick me up at the 14 freeway and then drive all the way back to Victorville to get to the 395. Well, he's wrong. Turns out we could have just got on the 14 freeway, gone to the 58, cut out Victorville and all that crap entirely, and just been in Barstow, or not even had to go all the way to Barstow, rather, to get the 395. So the way he wanted to go, we still did not end up having to go all the way to Barstow, but we didn't have to go through Victorville and Adelanto and Grass Valley or whatever it was. We could have bypassed all of that and just gone to California City and all that stuff that I had never actually seen before. So there you go. Live and learn in reverse or whatever. But he was kind of stubborn and wanted me to stay. It wasn't even his place. He was staying with friends, and he took me there the night before to meet them, and they were all pleasant and everything, but it was the total cat pee house. I was like, no, dude, I don't need to stay here. I got my own bed, which was true because I would have had to sleep on their couch with their cats. It was like, No, I didn't want to do that at all anyway. But at least he didn't have to backtrack all the way down to, bump down the hill to gather me because I got a ride up the night before, and then he picked me up and took me to dinner and yada yada yada. Like I said, where I met these friends, yada yada yada. So, anywho, so the part of Joshua Tree that Bono wants you to go visit is probably the part that I missed. Same as always. There was some pretty stuff going on. There's still a lot of yellow flowers and these toilet brush trees or whatever they call them, little succulents and the actual Joshua trees. I did get to see the saguaro cactus or whatever. I've seen them before a long time ago below Phoenix, but the last time I drove below Phoenix, it was pitch black. It was 10 o'clock at night already. So I didn't see any scenery. This time I got to see all the scenery between Tucson and Phoenix, but again, I wasn't that overwhelmed as much as I, could have been because I had already, gone through New Mexico twice in two different areas. And Tucson, I didn't really explore Tucson. I stopped at the rest area and tried to sleep for like an hour, but I was sweating so much in the car that became untenable. So it was easier just to keep moving, and had lunch at the next rest stop or whatever it was. I'll get the big map. Tucson to Phoenix is not that long because you're not going all the way to Flagstaff, and Flagstaff isn't even all the way to the Utah border. So driving in Arizona, like there's maybe more stuff to see, on I-40 and some other stuff to see here and there. But typically, if you're just going from state to state, like you're not in Arizona as long as you could be, it kind of goes by a little quicker. But then the part of Phoenix, the part of the freeway west of Phoenix, it's pretty flat. The mountain stuff is mostly on the California side. So I really wanted to bypass that because I went through all that last time. Everything after Palm Springs, I remember being kind of a nuisance. So like I said, I just decided that going to Barstow would be a little shortcut because I didn't want to go all the way to San Bernardino. But you wouldn't want to do that with a U-Haul truck. Yeah, that road was a little bit, and like I said, I don't really know that Lucerne Valley area and all that very well. I don't think I would have gotten lost. I just don't know how much time it would have taken to get to Victorville. I don't know how close that is to Victorville. This map won't show me. I'd have to go to the California map. And then Phoenix, that's all built up. When I went through the last time, it was, like I said, it was pitch dark, but I could see stuff all the way from the freeway. So I was like, okay, it's all stuff now. It's not empty. It's not really empty between Phoenix and Tucson. Whatever I thought was going to be open desert, like when I went camping that time way back when. Not at all. Or maybe that camping's still there somewhere, but not there. Victorville, Yucca Valley. Yeah, see, Yucca Valley to Lucerne Valley. I don't even know where Lucerne Valley is on this map. That must be there. It's maybe 30 minutes. So yeah, it probably would have been faster for me to go through Victorville instead of going up this stupid highway that seemed to dump me off on the wrong side of Barstow almost. But again, I only had this, and this is not that detailed. But I know that what road is that? 138 or something. 138 or 134, one of those anyway, that goes through Palmdale and all that. There's lights. There's a lot of slower speed limits, but everybody there drives like about at a 80s. So They all ignore the speed limit. In fact, most of them ignore the stop signs too. So watch that if you go through that area at all. And yeah, Lancaster, Palmdale, and Little Rock. Dangerous. Lots of bad drivers. Victor. See, the problem with Victorville to East Palmdale or Palmdale, I went on it one time. It's this narrow one-lane road. I really had to go to the bathroom. I stopped on it. It was rush hour in the morning, so there was people on my butt. But I totally parked illegally to use the bathroom on the side of the road in a part where it was kind of unincorporated and nobody was going to care. And it was taking my life into my hands. I'm surprised I didn't get killed. That was when I came home from Kansas City through Vegas. So not a way I would usually go. And I had gone that way instead of going down that, like I said, that 134. Well, I don't know what the number is, but it's Palmdale Boulevard. It's called Palmdale Boulevard, and it goes all the way to Adelanto, and there's a gas station there. And then you had to loop around to get on the Palmdale Boulevard and figure it out. Because I thought I could just get off the freeway and go on it, and I couldn't. I had to go to another block, and it was really screwy at 6 in the morning trying to figure it out. And it was dark, and I didn't know where it was, but I found it by a miracle. And that dumps you off at between Llano and Little Rock. There's a little post office in a crossroads where they merge together. And that is where I went that time. And I don't know. But that's not the post office that does passports. That's the wrong post office. If you want the one that does passports, it's the Little Rock one, not the Llano one or whatever. There might be another name. I forget them. But anyway, that's near Devil's Punch Bowl where I posted those photos of Devil's Punch Bowl last month too, also as well. So right near that little post office is that road for that too, where I have not been in 15 years or something, 12, 15. I forget when that trip was. I should go there again sometime soon and take new photos. Okay, but I just did Joshua Tree and didn't take any photos. So I might go back to Joshua Tree on a different route before I go back to Devil's Punch Bowl. Don't quote me. But yeah, but Joshua Tree is definitely not as nearby as you would like for convenience, but it does have some, rock formations and different things. The saguaro, anyway, the point about the saguaro cactus, I think those must be very closely related to Joshua Tree in, mineralogical terms or however you call that, because I think they're both kind of ancient. They both grow really slow. They both have like a kind of a structure that reminds me of each other, because there aren't a lot of cactus that, that's our stereotypical cactus, but really most cactus don't look like that big, tall guy waving at you kind of cactus that only exists in like that one small little region, right? And the Joshua trees, like I talked about the hippie gal after we spent 4 hours together in the Colorado bus stop. We were driving together, and when we got near Barstow, she started freaking out about all the palm trees. And I was like, those aren't palm trees. None of those are palm trees. You've ever heard of U2, right? And I would not expect her to have known who Graham Parsons was, although maybe in those days, apparently she was more familiar with the Grateful Dead than U2 or whatever, because she should have recognized that the Joshua Tree was a definite Mojave thing, Whereas the other desert, what is that? The Sonora Desert, I think, the low desert, as opposed to the high desert. So they have slightly different, but they evolved, I think, around the same time. Not being a scientist, just So yeah, Mojave is all the way up here. Oh, and I got to see that rocket launch. That apparently they saw it all the way in Phoenix. That has nothing to do with, but I had a nice, good view of it. Why can I not find what I am looking for? Okay, here's Victorville. Here's this. So yeah, Joshua Tree is closer to Salton Sea on this map than I would have thought, because there was a sign that said Mecca. I was like, Mecca, isn't that by there? And I didn't realize, yeah. So you would have had to go south from there, but from Interstate 10, that's still a pretty good drive, because on the south side of Interstate 10. I'd been through Mecca like once a long time ago. Because I thought about going the Yuma way and then going up from El Centro just to see it. But again, it was dark, so it wouldn't have seen much. By the time I would have got there, yeah, it might have been daylight, or for a couple. It might have been closer to lunchtime actually. By the time I would have maybe got to Yuma, I'm not sure. But I've already, like I said, I've already been not all the way to El Centro, but I've been to Salton Sea a couple times, so didn't really interest me that much. But I could have gone up that way and taken a little bit longer and gone through Joshua Tree that way, but I didn't. Because I didn't realize where geographically I didn't have the patience to really look at this at the gas station. I just kind of was looking at it in the car when I was already on the road. So then when I saw the sign that said Joshua Tree, I said, yep, that's where we're going, and did that. And so yeah, that bypasses Palm Springs and some of that. And then Redlands. I've never actually been to Redlands before San Bernardino. So I could have taken this same 247 through Big Bear, apparently. I've been around most of that, probably on this same road a long time ago, and didn't realize it's probably the same exact road. Yeah. So who knew? But yeah, I definitely didn't want to go through more mountains. I was trying to bypass mountains. So yeah, like I said, Barstow instead of Lucerne Valley. So I added a little bit of distance, but almost zero traffic. So fine. But yeah, when you get out here, I'm not really familiar with Desert Hot Springs and all that kind of stuff. I've been through there, but I've only been to Palm Springs like twice. I know it's just rambling now, but I don't care. Nobody's had any questions yet, so I'm not too worried about it. So I guess we'll go on to part 4, the decor part of the thing. And if anybody thinks that I missed something I should have talked about in part 3, sightseeing stuff. Oh, no, wait. I forgot to show off all my little brochures. See once again. So I got whatever that is. Railroad stuff. I saw a bunch of railroad actual trains, but I didn't look at any of these when I was in the hotel. I just grabbed them all so I can look at them someday. Oops, I accidentally grabbed an extra one of this for my cousin, and I forgot to give it to him, so that's no problem. I can mail that or something. So there's a dinosaur museum. Like I said, there was a crater meteor place in a couple up Durango, one of the places I do want to go. Maybe sooner than later. Turquoise Trail. So, like I said, I don't know if that's New Mexico or Joshua Tree. They both look kind of the same. The perfect day trip. Well, I guess that depends on where you're starting. Yeah. If you're starting in Albuquerque, that might be convenient. Otherwise, although I picked these up in Gallup, so you take it with a grain of salt. Oops, I accidentally got an extra one of this. Something else I need to give to a relative. I already showed that. Okay. Canyon de Chelly. I've been near there, I'm sure. Gallup. Whatever's going on in Gallup. I don't know, because I was only there for 10 hours or something. My time in Gallup was mostly taking the guitar out of the car that I didn't end up using. Did I already show that one? Yes, I did. Oh, no, that's a different one. Different Sandia Peak. Ooh. She saw some little mesa and asked me what's the name of that mountain. I'm like, that's not a mountain. That's just the thing that's there next to the gas station. People were taking pictures of it. It's like, yeah, because they're tourists. They take pictures of anything. Doesn't mean it has any cultural significance apart from any other mountain. Or whatever. Carlsbad and Alamogordo. Other people are more interested in Roswell and all that kind of thing. Then there's Taos and Santa Fe up the other way. I know they have some kind of resorty stuff, but they don't necessarily let you go hiking in the woods there because they don't want their rich yuppie patrons getting bit by snakes. So that would be maybe this Mountain of the Gods Inn at the, I'm sure this is, yeah, casinos and things. This might be a ritzy one near Santa Fe. Don't quote me on that. I know there's a ritzy one near Santa Fe that's like that, where I would be like climbing the fence and telling them to go screw themselves. You might get hurt. Yeah, well, that's part of the point of hiking is surviving. Like I said, this is the Texas stuff, not the New Mexico stuff. I've already been here. I haven't been there. I've already been here. I couldn't leave fast enough. So what there is to do in Amarillo, couldn't tell you, don't care. Free pocket knife if you go to wherever the hell this is. I didn't go there. There's a map. Amarillo knife guys. Oh yeah, I saw their billboards from the. Oops. Backtracking just slightly back to New Mexico. Town we did not visit. Duncan. I don't know if I've been through Duncan because I don't know if it's on I-40. I've been to Stillwater and Tulsa, and I shouldn't give Tulsa too bad a review because I was at the bus station and the bus station sucks everywhere. But so I was at the Tulsa bus station and going, I don't like Tulsa. Get me the hell out of Tulsa. But again, that, might not be completely true of the entire town. So I don't know where Duncan is or what they have to offer. And then there's a whole Amarillo brochure, but I didn't plan to spend the night there, but we did. And all I can tell you about it is leave before the rain starts. that was what my plan was. And like I said, I wanted to go to Lubbock, and that did not happen. So there's my brochures to look at later. So if I have some brochure update or somebody has a question about the brochures, which I doubt, you can go ahead and ask me in the comments. And so part 4. Maybe I should do a decor video, but for those of you who stuck around this long, who wish I had more root beer, I did go to Phoenix. Everybody was at IKEA in Phoenix. Why? Leave. Don't be at, I saw more cars at the IKEA than at the car lot next door where they were selling the stupid cars. I was like, why the hell does everybody in Phoenix buy all their furniture at IKEA? That's a nightmare. Oh my God. I don't know if they have anything at IKEA I would ever want ever. Okay, so now I got that out of the way. I've said it more than once. And like I said, I'll tally up my Texas counties. I'll have to do it on the MapQuest because, like I said, that atlas is not great. So don't expect me to have that done today. But if you're actually interested, check back in my community posts in a couple days. Okay. We did go to one Western furniture store, and I wanted 3 things. There was like a credenza kind of thing. There was 2 different TV shelves, so I would have grabbed both of those. And then probably a dresser or something. I don't remember. And they had a desk that was kind of a more of a typing desk than a computer desk. So for nostalgia reasons, I would have liked to have that. But for real practical reasons, I am kind of stuck with these shitty things that I hate. But they roll and they have a place for your printer and, yada, yada, yada. So for now, Old Faithful it is. And they're particle board and they're $30 probably. No, they cost more than that, but there was one real wood. bookshelf, but I mean, bookshelves are kind of generic. I don't know that I would want to necessarily pay that much extra for a bookshelf, except to make it match the other furniture. I do need to replace half of my bookshelves because, again, they're particle board, and I'm surprised they still hold all the weight they hold for all the years of abuse I've put them through. It's something like a miracle that they're still around. This was in the Atlas. But I can't afford all new furniture right now. So yeah, if I had $2,000 and a way to get the stuff back home, I think I would have bought some of it. But some of it, like the kitchen tables, I don't necessarily care for because it takes up so much space and it's so heavy and it's so like kind of oppressive looking. Like I like my kitchen table to be more of a pleasant look to it, more of a country look than a farm look, I guess, or a cabin look, I should say, or a bunkhouse. That's the word I'm looking for. Bunkhouse, yes. I couldn't think of it the whole weekend because hunting lodge is slightly different than cabin because hunting lodge is where you're putting your guests. Cabin is where you're staying yourself, right? And a bunkhouse, like think of Yellowstone. Costner lives in the one house, and then there's the bunkhouse. The bunkhouse is a no frills version of the Costner house, but they're both going to have similar stuff because they're getting all their furniture from the same guy, theoretically, right? So you still have this big, heavy slab of wood, both in the bunkhouse and in the main house. And a lot of people think that's a good look for a main house. I would not want my main house to look like a bunkhouse. So it'd be either or for me. Either give the bunkhouse guys a card table and let them eat off it and do whatever, or put the big ugly table in there and buy a nicer table for your actual house. And same with your bedroom. I don't think that wood, unfinished, chunky wood look is nice for a elegant bedroom. I think it's not really bunkhouse furniture because then you want bunk beds, hence the bunk thing. But similar thing to the kitchen table. It's either or, you know. Again, if you have a cabin, you're utilizing what you have around you, so you're making your own furniture, so it might look more like that by default than aesthetics. And same with your hunting lodge. If you have a hunting lodge, though, again, it's where you're putting your guests, so it's more for aesthetics. So you're putting the polyester bedding with the little bears on it, or the deer motif, or the coyotes, or whatever the other motifs are. You know what I mean? Like you buy all the stuff that looks on one theme all the same, and you just throw it in there. Or you could do hodgepodge if you really wanted to. Some deers over here and some bears over there, or do one room deers and one room bears. You know, yada yada. You know, there's combinations you can do, but that's not your. That looks like a children's room if you put that in your main house. Again, in your. If you're Costner, you don't have a quilt with a deer on it. Why? Like, you just wouldn't, right? So yeah, like this kind of thing, like this kind of guitar strap, you know, this looks great in your cabin. This looks great in your bunkhouse, but it's still a nice leather. You could still have this for your main house, but you'd have to really make all your decor leather guitar strap decor, right? I mean, like I said in the past, this house is a kind of a mess because everything kind of ended up in the wrong room. So that cabinet is the wrong color wood to go with beach cottage white. You know, it's not a perfect room. It's not a finished room. Don't look at this room and go, what is he talking about decor? Bad example. Ignore all of this. This is just for making videos. Anyway, so yes, but it's still a step up from IKEA because at least it's real wood. I mean, they had like a bookshelf. It was probably like $300 or something. So more than I'd want to spend on a bookshelf. But it's real wood. What is wood going for these days? But I would want something a little more refined. Like when you put nobody has DVDs and stuff hardly anymore either. So you've got these DVD drawers and stuff that are kind of redundant. So you're mostly putting knickknacks there now, so it doesn't really matter. But if I was putting DVDs or books or something, I would want it to be more of a smooth, sanded, polished feel than kind of a rough feel, because I don't want my books or my you know, tape cases or whatever getting messed up, scratching in and out of the thing. So I didn't like that aspect of it. It's like, okay, if I'm spending this extra money to get the wood, I want it to look a little better, feel a lot better. That kind of thing, a little more refined. But again, and some of it I want it sturdy. So I liked that aspect of it. But then if it's too chunky, yeah, it's sturdy, but then it's not pretty. So I don't know how much I like all the Western style furniture I see, especially for indoor homes, especially if my house is not a ranch house and it's a prefab. Because newsflash, the houses that are going up in Texas now are more like, you know, California interiors than traditional Texas or whatever interiors. It's all suburbs. It's all strip malls. Most of the people I saw, pedestrians in the one neighborhood, were all from India or something. Apparently, a lot of the places have moved the call centers here. So you used to get frustrated calling the call center and getting routed to India and not being able to understand the person, you know, and you're like, now you're calling America and still getting India on the phone, apparently. So how that's worked out, I don't know. But they speak more of a British English and they speak it with a heavy accent. So it makes it hard to, you know, negotiate your credit card problems or whatever when you have a slight language barrier. That's all I'm saying. And I've gotten some that are Hispanic speaking too. So I don't know if those were in Mexico or San Diego for all I know. But at least I'm kind of used to that accent, right? Because I live here. If you live in New Hampshire or something, I don't know, your results may vary. But the kind of funny thing, going back to part 2 or 3, one of the things that's kind of funny is the scenery doesn't always match what you think it's going to match, because, like, you know, northern Arizona is not saguaro cactus. In fact, a lot of it is pine trees, different kind of pine tree. You know, I think it's ponderosa pines, but don't quote me. A lot of it I had blocked out or forgotten. I was like, when we got to certain part, I was like, I don't remember any of this. This looks way different than I remember. These little trees instead of that or whatever. But then when we got to eastern New Mexico, I was like, okay, yeah, this looks exactly like what I thought New Mexico looks like. Yeah. Same kind of thing, principle with decor. You know, I wish I had said that stuff earlier to tie it in better, but whatever. I can always put it in the comments or something. So yeah, a little bit of that Western furniture, but most of the people, like I said, around the areas where we were in the burbs weren't dressed cowboy at all. There was like one guy wearing his hat indoor at the restaurant, which of course in traditional cowboy chivalry manners, you take your hat off when you're indoors. You don't wear it inside to look more cowboy than everybody else. And a cowboy should know that. I should have said that at the very beginning, back when I was bitching about IKEA or whatever, or way back at the beginning of the video when I was bitching about the other thing that I bitched about. So yeah, I didn't really see a lot of yeehaw going on in those neighborhoods north of Dallas, or we saw, like I said, some of those kind of ghost towny kind of towns. You know, it was more farmland than cattle country or whatever. So I'm not sure exactly, but we did see some. And saw horsey places. There was horsey places in even the college town, like Denton. Denton had a college area. Some girl told me to check out Denton Square and said I might find it interesting, but I didn't get to do that. I only got to go to Walmart, and I didn't get to go to, I don't know if it was a private residence or a horse rental place or whatever, but there was a big place right on the highway near Walmart. They definitely had horsey stuff there. What else was by there? I forget. I don't know. It was like Subway, and there was a cute girl at the Dunkin' Donuts or whatever. There was, you know, it was all the same. It was all service jobs. Like, there wasn't a lot of professional jobs. The only place that was professional that was, you know, an actual career that I could say for very consistent. There was a lot of dentists around. Every place had a dental office. So that if you're a professional and you want to live in North Texas, I guess that's one where you can find a spot pretty easy. Whether or not you get anybody to come to your practice, I don't know, but there's a ton of them. So they must be doing something right. Other than that, like I said, a lot of people, I guess, work in the call center. A lot of those headquarters places are in Frisco, where I did not go. I only know the name of it, but I know we could see Frisco from the highway. Maybe there was like half a dozen water tanks that you could kind of see in the distance. So you could kind of count the little municipalities or whatever along the one strip. The other side you couldn't really see because there was a lot more woodland, kind of tree forest, not forest, but tree areas. So it kind of obscure your view. Like there was one house that must have, you know, the guy must have been there since the 60s, or maybe his family's been there even longer than that, because they had their own driveway off the thing. And then right next to that, they're putting in 2 new subdivisions on this side and then probably another new subdivision on the next corner. So they're cursing all the new traffic and even more traffic that's going to come. They probably wish their driveway didn't empty out onto that road anymore. Probably wish they had another way to get out than getting stuck at that light. Yada, yada, yada. And then I'm talking about decorations and home furnishing and stuff. Anyway, so moving, it's not quite part 5. It's still technically part 4. But my cousin and my sister decided to kind of swap houses. So I ended up mostly unpacking at my cousin's house, not my sister's house, because my sister, half the stuff is staying in boxes and the other half of the stuff is, I don't know what you were thinking packing this. So if I was doing this, here's my tips before we get to the decor part, talking about the moving part. 1, don't get the smallest U-Haul if you're going farther than across town. The one that says like studio apartments is literally for studio apartments. She did the pods thing and then thought that the rest would fit in the U-Haul, and it kind of worked out, but they didn't have reclining seats, so it's super uncomfortable for going more than 30 minutes. So making, like I said, 3 days long of drive, when if you had the other van you could do in shifts, because one person could recline and snooze and the other person could drive, and you could switch off, and we could have been there in 26 hours or less instead of 72 hours of misery. 2, the pods. Now the pods is done by weight, but you still want to jam as much in there as possible so that you're not renting something else and getting stuck with the wrong frickin' truck, right? Or whatever else you can cram it. The other thing to do, though, if you were going to be cramming stuff, would be to get the van, because again, I think with the van you could still recline the seats and be comfortable enough and even sleep in the rest area and not need a motel for that second night or whatever. Because if you just need a few hours before you drive those next few miles, you want to at least be able to relax and rest in the stupid thing, especially if it's humid out. You don't want to be sitting outside as much as you know, and get eaten by mosquitoes or just be miserable. You want to be able to relax in the vehicle. So that, but the pod, I would say definitely cram as much of that as possible into the pod. And then we had hired labor for the one day, and they did okay moving the stuff. Some of the stuff got broken, but it was probably broken just loading it onto the truck from the driveway, because the way it was packed. I didn't pack it, and she didn't care. She said it was expendable stuff, but it's like, well, yeah, but you bothered to pack it, so it's not that expendable. You know, why pay to move it if you're just going to throw it away once you get there? Could have thrown it away here and saved yourself the trouble of loading it. So that, but then when we got there, the 2 guys who were from California who wanted to unload the truck, they were paid for 2 hours. I'm used to people kind of milking the job and kind of taking their time. These guys wanted to rush and leave and still get paid for the full 2 hours. So she was annoyed about that, because she was like, hey, don't damage my stuff. stop breaking stuff, throwing it on top of other stuff to put it all in one dolly load instead of taking 2 dolly loads, but they didn't care. But that stuff was probably already broken, like I said, when it was loaded on the truck in the first place. So I don't know when that stuff got broken. I know when the other stuff, when I unboxed it, it was already broken, and I knew it wasn't those idiots because I was the one who took it off the truck. So there was that. So like I said, that stuff got broken in California. Pretty sure. So the pod thing, convenient otherwise, but they had some special, so it took extra days or something to get the pod there. So it's not quite as direct as you load the U-Haul, you drive the U-Haul, you unpack the U-Haul. So if you want something a little faster, that. So we were trying to work around that schedule, which was kind of annoying. It kind of, because I wasn't even going to go on this trip. And if I did go on the trip, I thought I was going to have a much more fun trip, but I didn't have to unload the truck at least, or the pod. But again, that's because we hired people to unload the pod and load the pod. So if I had to load and unload the pod, I would be telling you a totally different story about why you should hire movers instead of renting a pod, maybe. Then we did, instead of a yard sale, we did an estate sale that turned out to make me probably less money than I would have made at a yard sale. I was really not impressed about their methodology. I guess you have to vet who you hire to do that and make sure that, like, if stuff is antiques, they're going to really price it like antiques and not just like a flea market. So apparently anything I had that was worthwhile that I didn't necessarily put on eBay because it was, inconvenient to put it on eBay, most of that ended up going to Goodwill anyway. So I could have saved myself a bunch of time and just loaded the car and drove it to Goodwill instead of bothering to wait for a week for them to price it and then throw it away for me. But other stuff, I was more than happy to have them throw away for me because it just got stuff out of the shed and whatnot. And it gave me an opportunity to maybe make a little money if it sold. That stuff I wasn't worried about, but the other stuff, it was annoying to find out that, like, I had a bike that was not worth very much, but it had $200 tires on it, and they got like $20 for it. And I'm like, no, the tires were worth more than that by a considerable amount. You should have told me. I would have taken the fucking tires off, brought them home, and put them in the yard sale before I knew you sold my tires for $20 fucking when the bike was worth, maybe 30, but the tires were definitely still good and cost way more because they were the mountain bike ones that the guy put on there that I actually didn't want. But by the time he had done all the work, I was like, okay, fine, I'll just pay and leave because this guy didn't fix what I wanted fixed and overcharged me for freaking tires. So there was that. So I know if I ever buy a bike, it won't be from that asshole. That kind of thing. Had some furniture that didn't sell. Apparently the furniture that did sell, I don't know what they got for it, but that condition is always the question. So I can't get too into the weeds about that or get upset about it. If it leaves, it leaves. Like that kind of stuff I'm not going to argue about, but other stuff like a cashmere sweater or like I said, China dishes or whatever, where this isn't Kmart dishware, this is real dishware. I thought they were going to understand that stuff and really price that stuff correctly. And it doesn't help that the people around here weren't estate sale people looking for. It was just all the same grubby yard sale people who want everything for 50 cents anyway. And they can't fit in a medium shirt because they all wear XXX and they only want to buy 50-cent clothing and whatever. So live and learn. So that was my experience with the estate sale, but I didn't actually deal with those people at all because I was gone the whole time. I'm thinking of starting my own estate sale company then and just putting these losers out of business. But again, getting the grubby people who show up to spend more than 50 cents on something might be a headache. So I don't know. But what they do the first day is they put everything at one price, and then the second day they slash it all to 50%. How much of a commission they take off of any of this stuff, I don't know. But if they're already pricing it kind of low, they're not making that much commission on day one. So I'm not making any money day two, and they're making a little bit of money day two. So that whole strategy is stupid to me. Again, why even have a day two then if you're going to slash all the prices and sell something to where you don't make any money, I don't make any money, and then you donate what's left to Goodwill. We could have just donated all the Goodwill then and been done. Instead of going through all this paperwork and all this extra rigmarole of them needing a house to themselves for a week to price all the things. It's like, well, if you're doing that, then the prices should be, just way more accurate. Again, and don't overprice everything on the first day and then underprice everything on the second day when it should have just been somewhere more around this price the whole time. And then you take half of that, so I'm still not making any money, but at least I got to feel like I didn't just throw the stuff away. So that was totally stupid. Or maybe there's better companies and we just haven't met them, because apparently I bought something from this same company 2 years ago and they act like it was priceless artifacts and the dresser fell apart in the driveway and she didn't even want to give me a refund for the money. She ended up giving me half the money back or whatever. So I still ended up paying for the bookshelf that I have that's a total piece of crap. But at least I got some of the money back from the one that fell apart that their employee damaged for me. So yeah, so not really impressed with that whole process. All I learned was that for as much as I hate doing yard sales, at least then I set the prices, what's left over that I want to put on eBay and what's left over that I want to take to the thrift store is a lot easier for me to sort than trying to pre-sort it. Because after everybody's picked through it and rummaged through it, and I decide I don't want to put it back, I have that option. Okay, forget it. I'm taking it to the thrift store. Whereas if I go through and they didn't buy most of it, then I know, okay, well, I'd rather put this on eBay than give it to these people for free. I can do that too. So there's that. Okay, so decoration, actual decoration. I mean, like I said, most of these houses, the layout wasn't terrible. They were building all these ones they were calling mansions in one spot, but they were about the same size as the typical houses you're getting in the high desert. See, California traditionally never had two-story houses because of earthquake fears. So all that mid-century modern stuff, the Brady Bunch house, that kind of thing. Brady Bunch house was unique in that it had an upstairs, but it was also a TV show. Most California houses built around the time did not have a second story. Now, most of the California houses built actually do have second stories. A lot of them are townhouses. A lot of them are condos. A lot of them are 5-6 bedrooms with 3 bathrooms, that kind of thing. So now a lot of the houses do have a second story. So it's kind of a new era. And the stuff they're building there looks pretty much like the stuff they're building here. So do with that what you will. So again, if I wanted to decorate this and make it look like an English manor mansion, sure, but it would be kind of pretentious with the rest of the house because the rest of the house doesn't look anything like that. Excuse me. Same with there. If you want to decorate the place to look like a ranch house, sure, but it's not going to look like a ranch house from the outside. It's going to look like IKEA from the outside. I don't know. So do with that what you will. If you want your house to be a little more personalized or whatever, you're going to have to go on the market and find one of those old wooden ones with a lot more character, like the one gal's video that I watched. She's not in Texas, though. She's in Washington State, but her house looks like a typical East Coast house, except with the wood instead of the brick, right? Because typically a lot of East Coast we think of as brick, Arlington especially, that whole kind of aesthetic. So yeah, I'll cut this a little short. I forget what else I was going to talk about, but this is already almost 2 hours, and nobody's going to watch all 5 parts of this anyway. So yeah, it's almost October. I'll do an update or a thing or whatever, boots and houses and stuff. And if anybody had any questions, they certainly didn't ask them while I was talking. So leave them in the comments and I'll try and think of something smart to say.